Now, how I'm gonna take a serious? I don't even know Big Mike, man. I don't take a serious that's on the other side of the world, man. I don't take none of these serious. Dude, don't you see me laughing, hee ha ha and all that? Well, you see I embarrass you like damn, because you study letting a nigga just attack me on your platform without even getting my side of the story. That this nigga just study.
I'll punch you in the head, little Mike. That is what King Yella reportedly said. Not a diss track. Not a carefully written social media post. A direct, real-time, no-filter threat aimed straight at Big Mike, Block Big Mike, the man who caught 28 years protecting King Von, the man who has spent the last year sitting in front of cameras exposing every uncomfortable truth about Chicago street politics that nobody else was willing to touch. And the reason behind it? Wooski, Big Mike's own brother. The same Wooski who became Von's top op. The same Wooski who Block exiled Big Mike over. And now Wooski has reportedly banned King Yella from Chicago. And Yella's response to that ban pulled Big Mike directly into a confrontation that nobody saw coming. Because Big Mike does not back down. Has never backed down. Caught nearly 3 decades for loyalty, and he is not about to let anybody disrespect his blood without answering for it. And King Yella just found that out the hard way. This is not entertainment. This is real. And it is escalating fast. Stay locked in. You need to see where this goes. Now let us understand exactly what is happening right now and why this particular flashpoint between King Yella and Big Mike has Chicago's South Side talking the way it is talking. Because this is not a manufactured rap beef designed to generate streams and views. This is 2 real men from 2 real corners of the same dangerous ecosystem colliding over something that goes back to blood, to loyalty, and to the specific rules that govern how grown men in this world are expected to respond when somebody disrespects their family. Big Mike is not new to this conversation. Over the past year, he has positioned himself as one of the only voices willing to sit in front of a camera and tell the uncomfortable version of Chicago street history. Not the sanitized version that gets repeated in tribute posts. Not the mythologized version that turns dead men into untouchable legends. The real version. The version that requires naming names, correcting false narratives, and accepting that some of what he says is going to put him directly in the path of people who would rather the full story stay buried. And the reason people care about what Big Mike says is simple. He paid for his position in this story with his life. 28 years. That is not a number people throw around casually in interviews. That is a number that represents an entire adult life sacrificed because of a decision made in a courtroom. A decision rooted in loyalty to a man, King Von, who walked free while Big Mike did not. When someone has paid that price, when someone has lived inside the consequences of Chicago street politics rather than simply commenting on them from a safe distance, their word carries weight that a typical YouTube personality or blogger commentary channel simply cannot replicate. So when Big Mike speaks about Wooski, about Block, about the specific mechanics of who is allied with whom and who has crossed which line, the audience understands they are getting something closer to a primary source than entertainment. And that credibility is exactly what makes the eruption with King Yella feel different from a typical online spat. Here is what triggered it. Wooski, Big Mike's own brother, the same Wooski whose departure from Block years ago reportedly became one of King Von's most personal and most dangerous rivalries, reportedly issued a ban preventing King Yella from operating or appearing in Chicago. The specifics of why that ban exists matter less to the public reaction than the fact that it exists at all and that it came from Wooski directly. In a city where reputation and territory carry more weight than almost anywhere else in the country, a ban like that is not a suggestion. It is treated as a serious declaration with serious implications for anyone who chooses to ignore it. King Yella did not stay quiet about it. And whatever he said in response, whether interpreted as defiance, mockery, or simple refusal to accept the ban as legitimate, reached Big Mike. And Big Mike, true to the persona he has built across a year of unfiltered interviews, did not respond with a diplomatic statement or a measured social media post. He responded the way he has responded to every challenge throughout these interviews. Directly. Personally. With an explicit willingness to settle the matter physically if necessary. This is where the audience's attention sharpens. Because this is not 2 content creators performing outrage for engagement. This is somebody who has already proven, through the documented cost of his own life, that he treats loyalty and disrespect as matters requiring real consequences rather than online clout. When Big Mike calls someone out, the history attached to his name makes it impossible to dismiss as empty posturing. And King Yella is not a passive figure in this either. He has built his own reputation around being unafraid to confront powerful figures publicly, having already drawn attention for tense exchanges with other prominent names in the culture. He does not back down easily, and that refusal to retreat is precisely what has allowed this specific conflict with Big Mike to escalate rather than dissolve quietly the way many online disputes eventually do. What makes this moment significant beyond the personalities involved is what it reveals about the current state of O-Block's internal landscape. King Von is gone. Lil Durk is sitting in federal custody, awaiting a trial that could define the rest of his life. The community that once moved with a singular sense of purpose under those two men's leadership is now navigating a landscape where smaller, more personal disputes are filling the vacuum left behind. Wooskie's ban on King Yella, Big Mike's willingness to escalate on his brother's behalf, the lingering tension from years of fractured loyalty inside and outside O-Block. All of it points to a community still trying to figure out who speaks for it, who protects it, and who gets to decide what disrespect looks like now that the figures who once enforced those rules are no longer present to do so themselves. And that is exactly the unresolved question hanging over everything that happens next. Because if Big Mike is willing to step up for his brother this directly, this publicly, against someone with King Yella's own combative reputation, the question becomes whether this stays contained to words exchanged in interviews and social media clips, or whether it becomes something the streets themselves decide to settle. Nobody watching this unfold right now knows which direction it is going to go. And to understand exactly why it has reached this point, we have to go back. Back to the original fracture inside O-Block. Back to Wooskie's exile. Back to the specific history that turned brothers against blocks, friends into casualties, and loyalty into something that gets paid for in years behind bars rather than simple words. To understand why a ban from Wooski carries the weight it does, you have to go back to the years before any of this content existed, before Big Mike sat down for a single interview, before King Yella built his platform. You have to go back to a friendship that started in childhood and ended in a federal courtroom, and to a brother whose departure from one of Chicago's most notorious blocks created ripples that are still moving through this story today. Wooski and King Von came up together. Not as distant associates who happened to share a zip code, but as two young men whose lives were stitched together by the same streets, the same dangers, and the same survival instincts that O-Block demanded from everyone who grew up inside it. For a period of time, their alliance seemed unbreakable. But Chicago has a long history of turning the closest relationships into the most dangerous rivalries, and what happened between Wooski and Von became one of the clearest examples of that pattern. At some point, Wooski left O-Block. The specifics of why have been debated across interviews, social media threads, and documentary breakdowns for years, but the consequence was undeniable. Wooski's departure was treated by many in O-Block not as a personal choice but as a betrayal, and Von, by most accounts, took it as personally as anyone could. What followed was a rivalry that many close to the situation describe as one of the most intense personal conflicts Von ever had, more personal in some ways than his more publicized battles with outside rivals, because it was rooted in something that had once been brotherhood. Big Mike was caught directly in the middle of it. Wooski was his blood. Von was someone Big Mike had built his own loyalty around, someone he eventually went to prison protecting. When the case that ultimately sent Big Mike away for 28 years unfolded, it intersected with this same tangled web of loyalty, betrayal, and consequence that had already been reshaping O-Block's internal structure for years. Big Mike's silence in that courtroom protected Von. It did not protect Wooski's standing in the community, and it did not heal whatever had broken between Wooski and the world he once called home. This is the foundation beneath everything happening today. Because when Wooski issues a ban on someone like King Yella, it is not an isolated decision made in a vacuum. It is a move shaped by years of Wooski existing on the outside of O-Block's inner circle, while still carrying influence in spaces connected to it. And when Big Mike defends that ban, he is not simply defending his brother's ego. He is defending the only unbroken piece of loyalty he has left after losing nearly 3 decades of his life to a system that rewarded his silence with imprisonment rather than protection. King Yella enters this story from a different angle entirely. His rise has been built on a willingness to confront major figures publicly, often putting him at odds with people far more established than himself. He has positioned himself as someone unafraid of backlash, someone who treats confrontation as part of his brand rather than something to avoid. That approach has earned him both attention and enemies, and it created exactly the kind of friction that turns a private disagreement into a public spectacle the moment Whiskey's ban became public knowledge. What makes this moment particularly volatile is the timing. O'Block today is not the O'Block of 2018 or 2019. Vaughn is gone. Dirk is incarcerated and facing a federal trial that could end his career and his freedom simultaneously. The community that once had clear hierarchy and clear enforcement of its internal rules is now operating without the two men who most defined what loyalty, retaliation, and respect looked like inside that world. Into that vacuum step figures like Big Mike, willing to speak when others stay silent, and figures like King Yella, willing to challenge anyone regardless of their history or their losses. The collision between them is not just personal. It is symptomatic of a larger struggle happening across Chicago's drill ecosystem right now. A struggle over who gets to define the rules in a landscape where the people who once enforced those rules are no longer present to do it themselves. Every confrontation like this one becomes a referendum on what loyalty means now, what respect requires now, and who has the standing to demand either one. And that brings us to the most pressing question hanging over everything. Big Mike has already proven, through the most extreme cost imaginable, that he treats loyalty as something worth sacrificing his freedom for. If he is willing to step toward King Yella this directly over something connected to his brother, the real question is not whether this stays in the realm of interviews and social media exchanges. The real question is whether anyone close to either man is going to let it escalate beyond words at all, or whether the streets themselves are going to weigh in the way they have weighed in on so many disputes before this one. Nobody outside the people directly involved knows the answer yet. But what happens next is going to tell us everything about whether O'Block's current generation has learned anything from the losses that built this story in the first place, or whether the same cycle is simply finding new names to attach itself to. Every story like this eventually moves from the realm of social media confrontation into something with actual legal and evidentiary weight, and the King Yella and Big Mike situation is no exception. Because underneath the surface-level drama of a ban, a threat, and a public back and forth, there exists a documented history of court cases, federal prosecutions, and physical confrontations that give this entire conflict a far heavier context than most viewers initially realize. Start with what Big Mike himself has already lived through. His 28-year sentence was not abstract. It came from a real courtroom, real testimony, and a real decision to stay silent rather than provide the cooperation that prosecutors wanted from him regarding King Vaughn. That case remains one of the clearest examples of how loyalty inside this world translates directly into legal consequence. Big Mike did not theorize about sacrifice. He lived it, and the paperwork attached to his sentence is permanent proof of exactly how seriously these relationships are treated when they intersect with the justice system. Then there is the broader O'Block legal landscape that this new conflict is unfolding inside of. Lil Durk remains in federal custody, facing charges connected to allegations that span murder for hire conspiracy theories tied directly back to the unresolved anger over King Vaughn's death. Multiple court filings, evidentiary hearings, and prosecutorial statements have detailed a sprawling case that implicates not just Durk but an entire network of associates whose names keep surfacing throughout these documentary-style interviews. The same community producing voices like Big Mike and King Yella is simultaneously sitting inside one of the most significant ongoing federal cases in recent drill music history. And every new public conflict adds another data point that prosecutors, journalists, and rival communities are watching closely. This is part of why Big Mike's recent interviews carry such heavy stakes. When he discusses visiting King Vaughn's grave, when he speaks about what he would have done the night Vaughn died, when he addresses his own near-death experience with OD involving Jarrow City, he is not simply telling colorful street stories for entertainment value. He is providing testimony that fills gaps in a historical record that has, until recently, been controlled almost entirely by speculation, rumor, and incomplete information pieced together by outside commentators who were never inside these rooms or these relationships. The evidence does not stop at courtroom documents either. Social media itself has become a form of evidence in these disputes, screenshots, recorded confrontations, and live stream clips capturing exact wording that gets dissected and reposted within hours. When King Yella allegedly responded the way he did to Whiskey's ban, and when Big Mike's response circulated publicly, both moments instantly became permanent record, the kind of digital evidence that outlives any attempt at later clarification or walking statements back. In this current era of hip-hop conflict, there is no quiet way to settle disagreements anymore. Everything becomes part of the public record almost instantly, which only intensifies the pressure on both men to either follow through on what they have said or risk public accusations of empty talk. New developments continue emerging as this situation plays out in real time. Other figures connected to a block, to Front Street, to the broader Chicago drill ecosystem have begun weighing in, some defending Big Mike's right to protect his brother's name, others questioning whether Wooskie's ban was ever legitimate enough to enforce in the first place. Each new voice adds another layer of complexity, and each new public comment increases the likelihood that this moves from a two-person dispute into something the entire Chicago hip-hop community feels obligated to have an opinion about. What makes all of this resonate on an emotional level, beyond the legal documents and the public statements, is the underlying truth that none of these men asked to inherit this much loss. Big Mike did not choose to lose his brother to a rival path inside O'Block. He did not choose to lose 28 years of his life. He did not choose to watch King Von die without ever getting the chance to process that lost the way an ordinary person might. Every confrontation he engages in now, including this one with King Yella, carries the residue of everything that came before it, every sacrifice that was never properly acknowledged, every year spent inside a system that took everything from him while the culture moved on without fully reckoning with what it cost him. That emotional weight is exactly why this story matters today, beyond the entertainment value of watching two outspoken figures clash publicly. It matters because it forces a difficult question onto an entire generation of young men still living inside the same ecosystem. If loyalty costs this much, if speaking the truth costs this much, if simply being someone's brother costs this much, what exactly is anyone fighting to protect anymore? The answer is not simple, and nobody involved in this story, not Big Mike, not King Yella, not Wooski, not the countless commentators dissecting every clip, seems to have a complete answer either. What happens next remains genuinely uncertain. Will this stay contained to interviews and social media exchanges, or will it escalate into something the streets themselves decide to settle the way so many disputes before it have been settled? Will new evidence emerge that clarifies exactly what was said and why, or will this join the long list of Chicago street conflicts that remain permanently contested, with each side maintaining their own version of events? And perhaps most importantly, will anyone close to either man step in before this becomes something neither of them can walk back from? This story is far from finished, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes it impossible to look away from. We watched it begin with a single ban, a brother's loyalty, and a direct threat that turned online tension into something that feels dangerously real. We traced it back through years of fractured relationships inside O'Block, through the 28 years Big Mike sacrificed for King Von, through the federal case still consuming Lil Durk's freedom, and through a community still searching for direction after losing the figures who once held it together. What you just watched is not simple entertainment. It is a living document of what happens when loyalty, grief, and unresolved history collide in real time, in front of an audience that cannot help but keep watching to see what comes next. So now we want to hear directly from you. Do you think Big Mike was right to step up for his brother this publicly? Do you think King Yella crossed a line that cannot be walked back from? And do you think this entire situation gets resolved with words, or does it become something far more serious before it is finally over? Drop your honest take in the comments below, because this community has never been afraid of the difficult conversations, and this is exactly the kind of story that deserves real discussion rather than surface-level reaction. If this breakdown gave you context you have not seen anywhere else, make sure to hit that like button right now, because it helps push this kind of in-depth reporting in front of more people who need to understand the full picture rather than just the viral clips. Share this with someone who has been following the Big Mike interviews, because they need to see exactly how this newest conflict connects back to everything that came before it. And if you have not subscribed yet, this channel exists specifically to bring you the complete story, the context the algorithm tries to skip past, and the honesty this culture deserves. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because Big Mike is not done talking, King Yella is not backing down, and this story is only just beginning to unfold. We will be here covering every single development as it happens.